You are now entering the Nerd House. Welcome to the Geekdom.
It's finally happening! You've all been begging me for years to bring my Thirsty Thursday videos back, and well, congratulations! Today is the day you are getting your wish. Well, kinda. I'll still have occasional rants and discussions about a random subject while drinking a beverage, but there will be less focus on the beverages being alcoholic. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. I don't want to just constantly always promote people to drink alcohol. There are lots of fun things that people can drink while we rant about ridiculous things. Today's episode, we will be making a bloody temple. It is a more spooky version of a Shirley temple, and we'll be chatting about fears. More specifically, we'll be chatting about the fear cards from the new Magic the Gathering Duskmourn set. The drink recipe for this is in the comments below, and I have a separate video of making this beverage for this video. We're all afraid of something or other. Some fears are logical, and some may be completely subconscious or even primal. But the fears in Duskmourn, they capture a little bit of both. So let's take a look at those cards. First up, we have the Fear of Abduction, which is a 4 white 5/5 that reads, as an additional cost to cast the spell, exile a creature you control. It has flying, and when this card enters, exile target creature an opponent controls, and when the card leaves the battlefield, put each card exiled with it into its owner's hand. So it's actually a pretty solid card as far as removal goes. Nice getting rid of something from your opponent's board state. Love it. The scientific name behind Fear of Abduction is abductophobia. When I was looking this up, I was like, really? Like, it's just abductophobia? Okay. But, you know, whoever comes up with the names, I guess certain things are just easier than others. One thing that I really like about this card is kind of that they focus more on like an alien type of abduction rather than just like kidnapping. Just to give it like a sort of different form of flavor, right? I know that there are genuinely people out there who have a fear of being abducted by aliens. Lots of people have a fear of being abducted by anyone, frankly. But the artwork on this specifically just makes me think aliens. And I know a lot of people are like grumbling and moaning like, oh, this is my fantasy game. Why are there alien and little green men in my fantasy game? Well, deal with it. I don't have anything else to say other than that. But the card ability flavor rating for this, I think, is fantastic. I mean, not only are you taking something from your opponent, but if they can destroy the abductor, then it comes back, right? And so it's just completely in line with being abducted and potentially, and hopefully, being brought back, you know, once they're done probing you. The card art flavor rating for this, again, I think it's really fun. The art, I interpret it as an alien. Some people might interpret it as more of like a fae folk or a fairy or something like that, which is also kind of probably more on theme, but to me the artwork looks like an alien, so I'm going with alien, and I love it. It's just whimsical, very dreamlike. I really like it. There is no flavor text on this particular card, so we're just going to move on to the next card. Overall, I think this is a really fun card. All right, the next card is the Fear of Being Hunted. It has haste, and the fear of being hunted must be blocked if able. It's colorless, red, and it's a 4/2. I think it's creepy as shit. The scientific name for this would be considered diocophobia. It's an irrational and extreme fear of being chased. There wasn't quite a proper scientific term for being hunted, but being chased kind of makes a little bit more sense anyway. I'm gonna set this down for a minute. This kind of reminds me of just classic horror in general. It also reminds me of like The Most Dangerous Game, like that story of like genuinely being hunted, or you know, a serial killer stalking the final girl in a horror movie and just constantly worried that they're just chasing you. You don't know where they are, but you know that they're chasing you. I love it. The card ability flavor reading, The haste definitely feels right. The unblockable gives it the sense of an impending unavoidability, as if you are being hunted, right? Like, you can't avoid it. Like, you have to confront it at some point, basically, right? So, that kind of thing. The card art flavor rating. Card art is super creepy. It's like this weird beastie with the skull. And something I like about most of the fear art is there's like these souls attached to whatever the nightmare is, or that's what I interpret it as being, right? So there's like, I like to think of it as the lost souls that were eaten by this nightmare. So all of the things that this hunted are also hunting you now too. Right? I don't know. That's just the way I see it. But the art is super creepy, but I love it all the same. And then the flavor text. This one has flavor text. It makes no effort to hide itself, savoring its praise, riding panic as the sounds its clacking skull grows closer and closer. I love it. I love it. Like, it is just so on point that, like, you know, it's just moving at its own pace, and no matter how slow it's moving, it is coming for you. Love it. All right, the next one is Fear of Burning Alive. Okay, so it is 4 colorless and red. It's a 4/4. And when this card enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. And it has Delirium. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, cards deal that amount of damage to target creature that player controls. The scientific name for this would actually be encavmophobia, also known as burnophobia, which is the fear of being burned. It's kind of a branch of traumatophobia, which is the fear of injury, and it's also a combination of like pyrophobia, which is the fear of fire. This fear often develops after a person is severely burned. Understandably so. Like, once you have been burned, you don't really want to get burned again, so obviously you're going to be a little bit scared of it. Seems terrifying. I mean, I don't really have necessarily a fear of burning alive, but I mean, I'm very careful whenever I'm reaching for a hot pan. I don't want to be burned again. The amount of times I have burned myself on like a hot glue gun is way too many. Or I think I still have scars from like times that I have burned myself with like my curling irons or straighteners or stuff. It's not fun, and it is a legit fear. All right, so the card ability flavor rating, I would say that it's perfect. You know, on ETB, it'll automatically deal damage. So as soon as that fire is there, it deals damage. And then assuming that you have the things in your graveyard, it will deal even more damage when more damage is dealt. So, you know, wherever the fire spreads, it's going to deal damage. So I think it works. Card art flavor rating. Again, this is some of the artwork that has like these lost souls or whatever in it. And they are like screaming because they are just like permanently in like this hellfire torment. Like, it is a very evocative artwork. I love it. It's beautiful, terrifying, incredible. I love it so much. And again, there is no flavor text, so we move on. So next we have the Fear of Exposure. This one is a 2 colorless and a green to play it, and it's a 5/4. Like, a 5/4 for only 3 is pretty good, but that's because as an additional cost to cast this spell, you must tap 2 untapped creature and or lands you control, and it has trample. So technically it could cost 5 if you choose to tap lands, or if you just have some creatures, then it only costs 3. So yeah, there's a give and a take. So this one was a little bit harder to find like what the scientific name was, because it's not quite fully a thing. So there's scopophobia, which is an excessive fear of being watched, which can cause social anxiety. And then there's also agoraphobia, which is a fear of being in a place or a situation where escaping may be difficult if a panic attack occurs. So it's kind of like a combination of those, I guess. I mean, so fear of exposure, right? Like, so this could be like a few different types of things. Like, there's the fear of being exposed, like you're out in the open, right? Like, there's nowhere to hide, that type of exposure. But it could also mean like the fear of being exposed in the sense that, oh no, you've been found out. Like, there was something secret that you were hiding about yourself, and it's now been exposed and people know about it, right? So there's that type of fear of exposure. It could also be as simple as, like, I don't know if you guys ever have those dreams where, like, you're in a public setting and suddenly you're just naked. You're just exposed, right? I hate it when I have those dreams so much. But so there's a lot of different types of what the fear of exposure could mean in this context. But to find, like, a proper scientific name for it, I couldn't really. So take that as you will. As far as the card abilities flavor rating, I mean, it's just this big nasty thing that's going to just trample over you because you can't stop it. You might be able to try to block it, but it's just gonna run right through you. So I would say that its ability flavor is it's solid. It's solid. The art, I think, is a little weird. This is probably one of my least favorite arts of the fears. It's just strange. Strange in a way I don't like. Like, I like weird. I like strange. I love creepy. This one just doesn't do it for me. I don't know what it is about it. But this one does have flavor text. A mouth like that can never keep secrets. So I think the flavor text is a lot of fun, and it kind of gives it a little bit more connotation to what type of exposure, right? So more of like the being found out. Like, you were keeping a secret and now it's been found out. So overall, really fun. All right, the next one is Fear-Filled Tests. It's 4 colorless and a blue for a 2/7 nightmare. This one's a real big beastie. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. Okay, so the scientific name on this one is a little bit different, a little strange to quite pin down. It's kind of like a form of a fear of a negative evaluation. Or a fear of failure, which is also known as eticophobia, which is a psychological construct reflecting apprehension about others' evaluations or distress over negative evaluations by others, and the expectations that others would evaluate one negatively, essentially. There's not quite an actual, like, scientific term for the fear of failed tests. But I don't know about you guys, but I definitely have nightmares that I'm still in, like, high school or college, and oh no, I'm late for class, I'm gonna miss that test. Or like, oh no, I just failed that course. Or, oh no, something other negative about school related dreams. Like, I hate those nightmares so much. Like, I am 33 years old. I have been out of college for 10 years. Like, why am I still having these nightmares? I don't know. I'm sure there's some sort of psychological explanation for it. Don't psychoanalyze me, please. Please. Thanks. All right, so the card abilities flavor rating. This one, I feel like it just doesn't quite fit. I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this. Like, I don't know, just like drawing cards when combat damage is dealt. I don't see how the connection is made between failing tests. I think the more flavor win for this is that it deals directly with one of the characters in Duskmourn. Like, obviously this fear is directed at Zabracus, who is a student at Quandrix. And she definitely seems like the kind of student who is an A student and never misses a test, and all, like, A student across the board. And I mean, even the flavor text of this is about Zabracus. It's, wait, what do you mean this quiz determines half of our grade? Which is Zabracus murmuring in her sleep. So, I mean, as far as what this card does, like, it makes not a ton of sense in the what it does, but it makes a lot more sense in the flavor that the flavor text adds and the flavor to the story. So, there's that. And the artwork, I think, is fun. It's a little bit too weird and creepy, but I mean, it works. It works. Like a weird nightmare strolling through a library. It makes sense. I get it. Next, we have the fear of falling. It costs 3 colorless, blue, and it is a 4/4, so pretty solid, nasty beastie, and it has flying, and whenever it attacks, target creature defending player controls gets -2/-0, and loses flying until your next turn. So the scientific name for the fear of falling is basophobia, which is a natural fear and is typical in most humans and mammals, actually. So a lot of us probably have it, just to varying degrees or extremities. It does differ from acrophobia, which is the fear of heights, which, you know, a lot of people mention having. But the two fears are closely related. I definitely have a fear of falling. The height of a place doesn't bother me whatsoever. I could be super high up, and as long as I know that I am safe and secure and I'm not going to fall from that height doesn't bother me. But as soon as there's like even a chance that I could like slip and fall and like hurt myself, terrified. And like I start getting vertigo and it's bad. But we try to avoid those situations. Except when I'm rock climbing. It's probably the reason I'm bad at rock climbing. It's fine. The card ability is flavor rating. I do think it's pretty solid, especially with its specific ability to make a flying creature lose flying, right? And so like that creature will have to fall. So just the little just flavor of that I think is really fun. Love it. The card art is super creepy. Again, we have like the creepy souls that they're like struggling and attached to this nightmare creature it's just chilling. It's just falling. Like the nightmare creature doesn't seem to be worried that it's falling, but the things that the like lost soul type things attached to it are definitely like, no, we're not going to be falling. And so like just the juxtaposition in the artwork I really like. It's so much fun. I can't quite tell what they're falling down. Like I don't know if it's a well or a tower. I think it might be a tower. I don't know. I kind of wish it was like an elevator. I feel like that would be a little bit fun, but I don't know if there's elevators in Duskmourn. I haven't read the story. I don't know. All right, and we have some more flavor text. Yay! It had been months since Jacob had started falling, but only a few weeks since he'd run out of breath to scream. So when I like read that flavor text, I just immediately think Alice in Wonderland, right? Like she's just falling down the rabbit hole, just falling. And so like when I think about it, the fear of falling in that context, that's like a whole different thing. Like, right? There's like the fear of falling and getting hurt because you're going to hurt yourself whenever you hit the ground. But then just like the fear of falling perpetually and never landing, just constantly falling. Like that is a whole different, just terrifying conundrum to even think about. Love it. Next is the fear of immobility. It costs 4 colorless and a white for a 4/4. And when it enters, tap up to 1 target creature. If an opponent controls that creature, put a stun counter on it. So for this one, again, there's not quite an actual fear of immobility, like not a proper term for it anyway. It's more of like a combination of claustrophobia, which is the fear of being trapped or restricted in a small space, and marinthophobia, which is the fear of being bound or tied up, which is the word like marintho comes from Greek and means string. But there is a thing called tonic immobility, and it's an involuntary response to extreme fear or the perception of being trapped in a life-threatening situation. It can cause motor inhibition, vocal suppression, and analgesia. So that's basically more in line of what it is. A fear of being tonically immobile? I don't know the proper grammar. It's fine. But for this one, like the fear of immobility, like, I don't know, like it's kind of like that fight, flight, or freeze mechanic, you know? There's definitely been times when like I'm almost like too scared to move, but then like just not being able to move is terrifying. But I don't know. This one, I don't know. It also just kind of reminds me of sleep paralysis dreams, but that's like its own card, so we'll get to that later. The card ability Flavor-aiding I think is perfect because as soon as this card enters and makes something immobile for essentially 2 turns, two and a half turns, depending on how and when it enters. So that's fun. Love it. I'm not a fan of this artwork. Like every time I look at this card, I'm trying to figure out what exactly is going on with it. Like we have like, again, the weird lost soul head things, but there's like antlers attached to them. Like I can't quite tell if the antlers are like, if they're like stuck on the antlers type things and that's what's making them immobile, or if it's just like this weird elk creature, and I don't know. I don't like this artwork. This is one of the few of the artworks I'm not a fan of, but I love the card. I love what the card does. And we have more flavor text. As it slunk toward her, Nina told her legs to run, but they stayed rooted and rigid. She screamed, but no sound left her lips. So terrifying, terrifying. And so like, just as I was talking about earlier, like the tonic mobility, you know, like you can't move. It impairs your motor inhibitions, vocal suppression. So perfect. Flavor text, perfect. Love it. Next up, we have the Fear of Imposters. It costs 1 colorless blue and is for a 3/2 that has flash, and when this card enters, counter target spell is controller manifests dread. So for this one, I couldn't actually find anything in my quick research about fears and phobias and stuff to give this particular fear a name. The closest thing would be imposter syndrome, but that's like also different because imposter syndrome is more of like the fear that you yourself are an imposter, whereas I feel like this card is meant more about like something else being an imposter, that like that person next to you is not actually your mother. They look like your mother, but that ain't your mom. So like I feel like it's that type of imposter type of fear that this card is meant to capitulate. But again, there's not really a proper word for it. But yeah, I don't know. Well, if you guys can find something, let me know, but I couldn't find anything. My issue with this card, like I really like it. I think it's a great card mechanically. I've used it in draft a few times. It's a lot of fun, especially if you can bounce it back to your hand. Then you can just keep countering people's spells, and it's so mean. I love it. It's unfortunate that your opponent gets to manifest dread, but whatever. I do kind of wish that it was a changeling in addition to a nightmare, simply for the fact that it's an imposter. It could be anything. It is anything and everything, right? But whatever. It's still a great card. Can't be that upset. And there is no flavor text. And the artwork. I'm not a huge fan of this artwork. I assume that this artwork has something more to do with like the Duskmourn story, which again, I am not caught up with. But in general, I feel like the art doesn't speak to me in this one. All right, so next up we have the Fear of Infinity. It is a colorless blue-black for a 2/2 that has flying and lifelink. This card can't block, and it has eerie. Whenever an enchantment enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, you may return Fear of Infinity from graveyard to hand. So the scientific name for the Fear of Infinity is apeirophobia. I didn't realize that this was an actual fear until like I looked this up. But yeah, apeirophobia, the fear of infinity. And it may be manifest as a gnawing fixation on the endlessness of space and the innumerable possibilities of time. It is kind of one of the more like abstract fears that people might have. I guess I've never really thought about like the fear of infinity a whole lot, like to infinity and beyond or whatever, but I don't know. It's just a really interesting. So like I guess it's just the fear of something going on forever. So I mean, in that sense, like I guess something that would like trigger me personally would be like if I was listening to a song or something and it was on repeat and it would never ever stop, and just like for the rest of my existence I would just hear that song constantly, like to infinitely hear that, like that type of fear of infinity I feel like I would be afraid of. But that's probably just its own thing with misophonia. I don't know. The card abilities flavor rating. I like it. I mean, it's a card that can keep coming back. I wish it was a little bit less dependent on variables like an enchantment specifically for it to be able to come back, but I get mechanically why it's that way. But if it was more like the Unstoppable Slasher, where like anytime it dies, return it to the battlefield tapped or whatever, I feel like that would be a little bit more in line with the flavor of infinity. But in general, the card is fine. The card is fine. The card art flavor, this one isn't as evocative as some of the others. I don't hate the artwork on this one. It's still really cool looking. The little like sea serpent that's like constantly eating itself, with again the little lost souls like perpetually trapped in this infinite chain that they can never escape. So it is really cool in that aspect. And it has flavor text. Yay! There are some nightmares so terrible, you're never truly rid of them. Love it. Love the flavor text. So perfect. Love it. I'm running out. I'm gonna run out before we finish. Oh no. All right, next up we have the Fear of Isolation, which is a colorless and a blue for a 2/3. As an additional cost to cast this spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. And it has flying. The scientific name for the Fear of Isolation is autophobia or even monophobia. And it makes you feel extremely anxious whenever you're alone. I mean, being alone can be scary, especially like if you're in a new place and you don't know where to go, or, you know, just in a new terrifying situation, or if you're in a haunted house and there's like monsters coming for you, like the fear of being alone and not having anyone else to help you. Like you only have yourself and your brain and whatever else is around you to like try to get yourself out of the situation. Like that can be terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But the card abilities flavor rating I think is perfect. Especially the additional casting cost portion of it, that you have to return something that's already on your battlefield to your hand in order to play this, right? So, to give it that sense of like, it kind of has to be alone. Not necessarily, I mean, it also depends on your board state, but like you have to lose something in order to have it, right? I don't know, it makes sense in my brain, but I love it. I love it. The artwork is really interesting. It's like weird and creepy, and like this flying bird thing kind of has like the Lost Souls thing going on. It's solid. Solid artwork. Love it. And it has flavor text! On the second day after he'd been separated from his friends, Tino worried they'd be panicking at his absence. By the fourth, he was certain they'd never cared for him at all. Poor Tino. Nobody loves him. But it super adds to the flavor of it. I love it. Next. Oh, wait. Next, we have the Fear of Lost Teeth. It just costs a single black for a 1/1, and when it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, and you gain 1 life. The scientific name for the fear of losing teeth is a type of dentophobia or odontophobia, which is a general fear of the dentist and dental procedures. I personally have dreams, well, nightmares about losing my teeth. I wouldn't say often, but like it's definitely like a thing that like happens every so often. Again, there's probably like psychoanalysis of that somewhere, but Whatever, ignore that. But I genuinely feel that mine is like actually just like a fear of losing teeth. Like, I don't know, like I always like anytime like I'm feeling my teeth and like if they just feel like even, and it's all like always in my head, but like a little loose, I'm just like, oh no, oh no. Like I've just had so much like dental work in my life, like orthodontics, and it's just terrifying. Like I don't know why. Like I would be fine, but like the like genuine fear of like just randomly losing a tooth, like it terrifies me. I don't it shouldn't, but you know, not all fears are rational. The credibility flavor rating, it's just small and simple, you know, like it's just a tooth, a single tooth, you know, you lose that tooth, just a single loss of life, just a 1-1 for 1. It's a solid card. I really like it. Great, good stuff, good stuff. The card art flavor rating I think is also really good, especially since they added the kind of like dentist office type of atmosphere to it, because there are a lot of people, including myself, who have a fear of going to the dentist. It can be scary. We're not going to go into my dental traumas. That's not what this is about. It's not. But overall, card is great. And it has flavor text! As it drew closer, Sam felt her own teeth wriggle in their sockets, as if they wanted to leap out and join the thing. Terrifying. Terrifying. Alright, we're going to add just the rest of our lemon lime. And just a splash more of ginger beer. To kind of give this little thing to get us through the last few of these cards. Now it's like way too gingery. It's fine. All right, so next is the fear of missing out. It's a colorless and a red for a 2/3. And when this card enters, discard a card and then draw a card. If you have delirium, whenever a card attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. For this one, the fear of missing out isn't an actual phobia. It's more of just a general anxiety, right? Like this is kind of a term that's popped up more over like the past decade or so. You know, people are always just like, oh, the FOMO is so hard, you know, when they can't be at this place that they see like all their peers at and they want to be there too. They fear that they're missing out on something. And FOMO can be so hard. But as far as scientifically, there's not a proper name for that fear. So there's that. The card ability flavor rating is solid. I mean, it kind of goes with like, you are missing something, right? And so you draw a card, but then you have to discard a card. So you're going to be missing out on that, right? So one way or another, you're going to be missing out on something, and it could be worse. Like, I don't know. It could be worse. Whatever. I don't know. The card art flavor rating. Again, this is some of the more like weird artwork. Like when I look at this, I don't really see like a fear of missing out. I'm not entirely sure how you would conceptualize that to begin with, but I don't know what this beastie is supposed to be on or in, or what it's trying to prevent you from doing. I don't know. So for this one, like the art is really cool. I just don't see quite how it ties in with the card as much as like some of the other artworks do. But it's fine. It's fine. And there's no flavor text. How dare. Next, we have the fear of sleep paralysis, which is 5 colorless and a blue for a 6/6. It has flying and eerie, so whenever a card enters or another enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. Stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponents control. Okay, so this one does actually have a scientific name. It is somnophobia, which is the fear of falling asleep, which arises from a fear of having nightmares or experience sleep paralysis. So I guess it does, but it doesn't have its own proper name. But if you have a fear of sleep paralysis, it's probably more so a somnophobia, your fear of falling asleep to have sleep paralysis. I hate sleep paralysis. It tends to happen to me more often, like, if I'm napping rather than, like, when I'm just regularly sleeping. I don't know why. There's probably some biological reason for that. But it's always so frustrating, right? Because you're in, like, a, like, half-lucid state, and so, like, you think that you're not dreaming anymore. But you can't move, and like you're trying to like will yourself to move, to even just like get up out of the situation that you're in, just get up out of bed, but you can't. You're just stuck there. And then there's that sleep paralysis demon, you know, it's just hovering, getting closer and closer, you know. I mean, my sleep paralysis isn't always like a sleep paralysis demon, but you know, that's like the general consensus, is that there's a demon. I hate it. I hate when it happens so much. As far as the card flavor rating goes, I think it's great. I mean, as soon as it enters, and anytime like an enchantment or other things happen, enters, you know, paralysis. You put a stun counter on something. And so like it works really well in that regard. And the fact that stun counters can't be removed. So not only are you stunning something, but it can't escape it. So this one is very like on flavor, on point, in my opinion. I really like it. The card art flavor, I think is fantastic because that just straight up looks like a sleep paralysis demon. And I'm pretty sure that whenever I have my next bout of sleep paralysis, that is precisely the demon that is going to be hovering over me, just trying to eat me or whatever is going to happen. I don't know. But I like it. I really, really like the artwork. And sadly, there is no flavor text. All right, next up we have the Fear of Surveillance. It is a colorless and a white for a 2/2 with vigilance, and whenever this card attacks, surveil 1. So the scientific name for more or less the fear of surveillance is scopophobia, which is the morbid dread of being seen. This card and everything, like it just hits just a sense of like paranoia really well, right? Like people who are just like, they're watching me, they're always watching, you know, just like I mean, I don't have a fear of surveillance, but like you know that like in like a lot of like scary movies, or especially I feel like in like disaster movies, there's always that one character who is just like, they're watching us right now. You know, so just like that fear of being watched, of being perceived. The card ability flavor rating, I think it works. I mean, it has vigilance, right? So like it can't ever be tapped. It's just always watching. It's always on alert. And the additional ability to surveil, to look at what's coming whenever you attack, I think it's on point. It's perfect. The card art flavor is a little strange. I do really like the weird floating eyeballs with like the like legion of lost souls behind the nightmare thing with like a bunch of hands for legs. Like, I don't know, it's just really creepy. But I like it. And we have flavor text! Its unblinking gaze sees every shame, every humiliating moment you wish you could forget. Ugh, contacts are gonna dry out. Ugh. And finally, the last one is the fear of the dark. It's 4 colorless and a black for a 5/5, and whenever this card attacks, if defending player controls no glimmer creatures, it gains menace and death touch until end of turn. This one does have a actual name. It is nyctophobia, and it is an extreme fear of the dark. The name actually comes from the Greek word for night. So there's that. Fun little neat thing that now you know, nyctophobia. This one is just so fun. Like every time I see this card, I always think of that show that was on Nickelodeon back in the 90s called Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like that was one of my favorite shows growing up. And it was terrifying. And I will always remember there was this one particular afternoon after school. It may have been in the summer, but I'm pretty sure it was, doesn't matter. And I was watching an episode. I was by myself. I was literally like sitting like a few feet away from the screen, just sitting watching this episode. And it was this moment, it was one of the scarier episodes too. And at this one moment, like the big bad monster pops up onto the screen, and it's like this cackling jester. Like, and I already have a fear of clowns, okay? And like, it's terrifying. Like, it is a super creepy clown creature. And just like jumps onto the screen, right? And then the power goes out. Okay? Like, in real life, the power goes out. I screamed. And I'm pretty sure I was home alone. Like, I was 10, maybe? I don't know why I was home alone. My family's probably around somewhere. But I was alone in that moment. And I, like, was convinced that my TV and everything was haunted. I was convinced that because the power went out right at that moment when that big bad scary thing escaped, that it was going to like come at me like out of the TV somehow, even though the TV was now turned off because the power was out. Like, it freaked me out. And the funny thing is, I ran across the street to go talk to my neighbor friend, and she was doing the exact same thing to come out and see if my power is out as well. You know, because like I had to make sure, like, did only my power go out right now? Like, am I the only one who's going to die right now because this like creepy Joker thing is going to come murder me from the TV? And so we're both running out to essentially ask the same thing, like, is your power out? And like I told her, I was like, oh my gosh, I was just watching an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And like she was like, oh my gosh, me too. And I was like, and the power went out right at the moment with the thing on the screen. She's like, yeah. Like, we were both just like terrified. Like, we both had like the same experience. It was wild. Needless to say, I was not murdered by a fictional jester that popped out of the screen. Wow, this rant went on for quite a while. Anyway, I really enjoyed that show, Are You Afraid of the Dark, even though it traumatized me as a child. So, there's that. The card ability flavor rating is pretty solid. I especially like the fact that if your opponent doesn't have a glimmer, then it has menace and death touch, right? So like glimmers in the story are supposed to be like light, they're supposed to be hope. And so if there's none of that, then this thing is gonna be like twice as bad, right? Like, there's no light. The darkness is worse when there's no light. So I really like that flavor. I think it's really fun. Card art, I think, is phenomenal. It's like this wax candle nightmare thing that's like putting its own light out kind of type thing. So I think it's just really fun and eerie, and I like it. I think this one might be my favorite. I really like it. And it has flavor text. The first thing it kills is the light. Which is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Alright, so that is all of the Duskmourn fear cards. I think that they are such a fun and flavorful addition to the set. Again, everyone has a fear of something, whether it is something that is brought on by past traumas in their life, or just something just primal and natural, like the fear of spiders. You know, a lot of people are scared of spiders or snakes, and it's because of our ancestors' like natural fear of like predators, right? And so it's just so fun. I love seeing these cards in the set. But thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you. Hopefully you enjoyed this rendition of Thirsty Thursday, Duskmourn Fear Edition. Lychees are so good. So good. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Throw down in the comments what fears you might have, or things that you wish would have been fears in the set. Like, what is a fear that you wish Wizards of the Coast would have put in this set? And how would you design it? I'm so curious to see what you have to say. Let me know. And again, if you want the recipe for this bloody temple, the recipe is down below, and I have a separate video with the making of that you could watch. So check that out as well. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Until next time, stay thirsty. Bye.